Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Market Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Tuesday, July 9th, coming to you from downtown, humid, sticky downtown New York City. But overall, not that bad as I'm sitting in a nice air-conditioned office. So let's get to the market. Well, first of all, risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Please read the full risk disclaimer there. Today was a little bit of a difficult trading day because the Qs opened up pretty hot. Like, the market was up decently to start the day. Qs were up like about 0.4 of a percentage point, and they kind of just gave back gains and didn't really, in my opinion, provide any like great trading opportunities in terms of just what the overall index did. I'm not talking about single names, but talking about what the indices did for the day. So Qs finished positive for the day, SPY finished positive for the day, but you could see down from the open. Small caps were a little bit all over the place. At one point, they went green for the green on the day. Right around like midday, they started to go green, but they're still tricky as the small caps are. We continue to see some bullish option positioning in small caps, so I think they're important to watch. I think also maybe some of the groups in the small caps are important to watch, considering that we are seeing some call positioning there. But I think ultimately just have to kind of let the price action dictate some of these moves. So I will go over that in just a second. We had the first of 3 bond auctions this week. TLT finished down, but not that I could actually take this out of red because it actually came back. There was decent demand for the bond auction. You're going to get 2 more of those this week. We had Powell do his first day of testimony. I think ultimately, just to kind of recap that, and then we'll talk about the technicals. But and by the way, we've got CPI on Thursday. But ultimately, it seems like the market is starting to kind of come to terms with that. We're going to get a cut in September, provided that all things being equal, that the inflation kind of stays subdued. But and I think Powell, from what I listened to, he's not committing to anything. I don't know why he would, but I'm guessing that the July 31st meeting that they're going to have, they probably hint at that, so that if, and again, all things being equal, if inflation data continues to be somewhat subdued and gets closer to their around 2% target, again, we're going to have to see a couple more months of flattish inflation in order to get that down to those targets. All right, so but in any event, 71% chance that you're going to get an interest rate cut. I talked about that in yesterday's video, so I'm not going to dwell on that. Let's get to the technicals. There's not really much to kind of go to. There's no change in tone here in the S&P. We're still above the value area for the month. We're still above the 5-period moving average. We're also above the value area for the week, and that's something that maybe keep an eye on. I was even saying yesterday, I wouldn't be surprised if we get some type of a check back with all the, one of the events of the week maybe causing a little bit of volatility. The Qs are still decently above its value area for the week, even though coming in a little bit. So, and extended, right? You look at the RSI for these, the RSI right now is a 76. So we're extended. And, so it's not to say that we can't get a little bit more extended or get more overbought. But I think these are ripe for seeing some profit taking. And we'll see. We also have a bunch of earnings. We're going to be starting earnings season too. So a lot of times, in my opinion, sometimes the indices just kind of chop around during earnings season, and that wouldn't be a bad thing either. We could also just kind of level out, right? Some of the things that we've talked about before is, sometimes people automatically think when there's going to be rotation or there's going to be where we're a little bit extended, they think that, oh my God, the market's going to sell off. I mean, we didn't really see that in last month. There was a couple days of weakness, and that was it, right? We didn't even come down to the 20-day moving average. So, and especially for the S&P, you go back to the S&P chart here for just a minute. Remember, this got overbought, right? Over here. So up in here, the RSI got to like a 77 or something like that. Yeah, 77, and then we just flatlined for about a week and a half. So I mean, that could happen too during earnings season, right? So you're going to get things like of course, so JP Morgan's going to start with their earnings reports and some of the other financials, right? And then I think we get Netflix next week. right? And we'll have a monthly options expiration too. But I think, I think this will really be driven off of, so 7/18 is when we get Netflix. All right. So I did not go over the IWM chart, but I want to mention it. And again, I talked about a couple of these things in yesterday's video too. I'll go through them quickly. But 203.27 is the level that I'm watching there. So again, we're just right smack in the middle of the value area. So again, I wait for price to confirm. I don't play the game of where I've got to be the first one in and pre-position, right? That's for more of the amateur traders to do that type of stuff, where they've got to try to predict and so on and so forth. What we do is based on, defined levels and, just like for Tesla, right? I did not have to pick so here's the thing, like it's really irrelevant if you needed to, like, if you try to pick the bottom here in Tesla, which was at 174 or 180, right? If you waited like I did until it broke into the value area at 190, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a very small move here. Now, of course, this worked exceptionally well, but who cares about trying to pick the bottom all through this stuff, right? All below the value area for the year. Wait until it actually happens. And then look at what happened. You're talking about a move of 70 points that we captured, right? And that's really impressive. But trying to pick these, trying to figure this out, and of course you could pay attention to call positioning and so forth. But if you're really trying to capture a big move, not just like a one-day move, but if you're trying to capture a big day move, it doesn't matter if you don't need to pick the bottoms, right? And I know fancy people on Twitter they'll tout, like, they'll show you one day of P&L. They won't show you what their P&L is for the month, but they'll show you one day when they called something right. And then they never show you any other days of P&L because, anybody can get something right for one day. But, what we try to do here is we try to be consistent and churn out, positive month after month. One day of posting of P&L is nonsense, but I see people do it all the time. So let's move on from this, but it's just a good example of being patient and waiting for the setup. So that's what I'm doing with IWM. I wanted to talk about a couple other areas because we talked about in yesterday's video that regional banks, right, will have to perform well in order for IWM to do, or should, most likely will need to perform well because they're the biggest weight. But I rather like what's going on in things like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, the larger cap names. Citigroup also doing well too. But this is a nice break higher. It hasn't been easy for Goldman, but it's been moving in the right direction. Also, I'm looking at this XBI in the biotech group, right? And XBI is the second largest group in IWM. This looks like it's trying. Now we don't know if this is going to break higher, but it's starting to make an initial move. It was strong yesterday. It was strong today too. So I would keep an eye on this biotech. There's been some false starts in it. Here's what the weekly chart looks like. Right. And I mean, this isn't definitely something that I've got my eye on. And we've talked about IBB before too. IBB does not look bad. It's kind of sitting there, right at the top of its value area too, using a weekly chart. Another area that I thought was really interesting was whoops. I don't know why I have Skype up. But the Chinese internet group kind of finally came alive today. Now, I don't know if this is going to be the start of a move in the Chinese internet group, but there was some really interesting moves that happened today. BIDU speaking of option activity, BIDU saw some option activity today, and this name really did well moving to the upside. Look at the volume today in BIDU. So again, it's kind of tough to say. I mean, this is a ginormous move that happened in BIDU, but it does come right back up to this previous level. I would be looking for things that are a bit stronger personally. I did go along some of this TME. This took out a VPOC up here. I had a question this morning about, oh, you draw these lines in. No, I absolutely do not. Right? They're from previous point of controls that have not been touched before, such as this one. And the market remembers, right? When a lot of times when market returns to these levels, there's overhead supply there, right? But absolutely not. We don't try, right? That's the beauty of using this indicator over like anchored VWAP. Anchored VWAP, you've got to set your anchoring. We don't need to do any of that. All of that is drawn for us automatically. I don't want to mess with any of that because that would make the indicator subjective, right? So this TME, after it took out this VPOC, it allowed the 50-day moving average to catch up, and now it looks like it's resuming in its trend. Very strong. I also like what's going on with overall emerging markets. So this is EEM. Right. And it's funny because I went over this pre-market. We do a pre-market session every morning for traders. It's just like 10 to 15 minutes long. I do it every day and send out a recording. And I was talking about emerging markets. I went through a couple emerging markets charts and I said, hey, this is not bad. I'm long VWO in the TTG trend portfolio, and I've been that way for a few months, but it's starting to kind of break higher here. So it's back to the previous. So again, there's other areas in emerging markets besides China that are looking pretty good. And you may ask, well, what are they? Well, one of them is India has been just absolutely on a tear this year and just continues to trend. I also like the South Korea ETF. Right, this is EWY. Someone said to me, they're like, well, there's hardly any volume in this ETF. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I'll tweet this out later. No fault to this person, but if you're snarky, I'm going to come back with a snarky response too. But of course, the volume is in the underlying companies, right? So any ETF, by the way, please do not just look at the liquidity in the ETF. You look at the basket of what it tracks, right? So what kind of companies are in this, right? This little company called Samsung, I don't know, maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't, right? That's where the volume is derived from. And that's where the liquidity is derived from, is the basket that it tracks, not the ETF. So you've got plenty of liquid names in here. You've got Samsung, you've got Hyundai, you've got Kia. Ever hear of Hyundai, Kia? Look at the volume and again, you have to do a little bit of work if you're going to do this volume comparison, but you've got to look into see what the volume is in those local companies. Again, look at the symbols. They trade locally, right? So you've got to go through and do a little bit more investigation than just looking at the volume in the ETF and saying, oh, thing isn't very liquid. That's very, very liquid in terms of the underlying components that it tracks. Remember, every ETF, it's derived from the performance of the basket. And market makers, right, this is something that I used to do in my institutional career. If I got a big order in EWI, would I be trading the ETF? No, I would be trading the underlying basket. I would be giving our international desk, an order in the equivalent amount of, and they would be trading all of these companies. That's how you source the liquidity in an ETF, right? But this is ETF 101 stuff, right? I would not be trying to, so if someone gave me a 5 million share order of EWI, I wouldn't be in there trading, maybe I'd execute a few 100,000 shares of EWI, but I would be giving it to our international desk and they would execute the basket for me in the overnight market and then give me a price back the next day. That's where the liquidity is, and that's how you trade ETFs institutionally. So let me move on from that. All right. Well, what else looks attractive on the weekly chart? Take a look at Argentina. Now, the week's not over. I'm looking at a weekly chart, so you kind of have to keep in mind that this doesn't have to finish this way because we've got 3 more days of the week, but I like this here too. So, I think that, having the ability to kind of go outside of, the 7 or 8 stocks that have been working really well when they will see profit taking, I think is important to be able to have that basis. There's one name that I did get long today. I was able to take a target in it and it kind of stalled as many stocks did, but I'm watching to see if this AER can get back above its value area. Also, GE today looked like, these are aerospace names, right? Because, again, why is aerospace interesting to me? Well, because we keep hearing about like the TSA agents saying that there's record people that are passing through and traveling. Right now, I don't want to go long Boeing because their tires are literally falling off their planes. I don't want to go long the airlines because those are really difficult positions. But I like aerospace stocks because some of these are just better run companies. And, one name I've talked about a lot is FTAI. Now, this is extended and needs to come down. So you kind of have to wait for it to reset and come back in a little bit. All right. I haven't talked at all about the semiconductors, but again, the semiconductors in this versus software it continues to be very interesting to me. Even though the semis did not finish on their highs today, they are still have really been outperforming software companies this week. I think that's pretty impressive. And the big name in this group, of course, NVIDIA didn't close on the highs, but did close above its value area. Saw a lot of option activity today, and I think you can continue to be long as it stays above that value area, which is 129.62. All right, guys, I'll leave it there. Have a great night. Overall, because I try to give you a kind of a glimpse of what I'm doing. I did take down some risk today. I mentioned I established a new position in AER, but I sold, I think, about 3 or 4 positions today. Again, just lightening up, and don't forget, besides all the events this week, you're going to have earnings season. So I like to generally be slimmer going into earnings season because I view it's a tougher time to swing trade. So, all those reports are going to really start to pick up next week. All right, guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.